we welcome you to Sebring International Raceway for round 1 of the World Racing League iRacing Series. Here we kick off an over 50 car grid here today at the incredibly famous Sebring International Raceway. It's Tyler Maxson on the commentary and production tonight alongside Daniel Dorr. Daniel, welcome to the commentary booth. It's your first time here, and what a way to jump in at a 55-car packed-out Sebring.
Thanks a bunch for having me. I'm really excited to see all the action. We've got 4 packed classes of racing with quite a bit of difference in closing speed, so it should be a lot of fun to watch in these opening laps.
It certainly will be indeed. This track, Sebring International Raceway, is a tough one on its own. And then, like you said, with 4 classes of cars all going to battle, it's going to just make for some weird interactions between the classes. We have 4 classes, like you said. GTO, the Porsche GT3 Cup car. GP1, the Audi RS3 LMS TCR. GP2 with the Mustang, and GP3 with the Mazda Global MX-5 Cup car, which everyone knows and loves so much here on the iRacing service. It should be an action-packed 60 minutes of racing here tonight. Qualifying is just ended. We're going to bring you down to the starting grid here momentarily. Eric Foss will start on the pole tonight alongside Chris Potter. Chris Pads in third with Ruth Galloway in fourth. Liv Patterson will round out the top 5 with Derwan Koskanak in 6th place. Andrew Rasmussen will start out of 7th with Corey Mitchell in 8th. Abri Kundal in 9th with Ray Rivard in 10th. Joseph Dale in 11th. Andrew Lanning in 12th. Ryan Leonard will round out your field here in Porsche Cup. Then as we move down the order just a little bit more, we'll look into your Audi TCRs. DJ Alessandrini will start on pole alongside Paul Slafik. Eric Kuttel will be in 3rd. Adam Fertile, Brian Zabrowski, Kyle Herbst, Fabian Duskan, Kevin Zhu, Bradley Adams, Josh Jansen, Stuart Dalton, Benson Tai, Andrew Jensen. Then we move into your Mustangs here. Max Lufer will start on the pole there alongside Jeff Jacobs. Chris Deschong will start in 3rd. Kyle Mayer, TJ Tammy, Nick Nelson, Nathan Shalom, Andrew Burr, Cade Mackey, Will Choice, Patrick Gallagher, Jared Joseph, Todd Carver, Stefan Karelke. This is already back in your MX-5, sorry. Mike Bond, Antonio Reese, Charles Foley, Steve Ray, Greg Mack, Joseph Mayer, Chris Diaz, Alex Zuga, Greg Brockway, Troy Trillo, Jim McGill, Ryan Hammond, Ben Wedge, Eric Roberts, and Simon Foweather will round out your grid, and I am officially out of voice here as the cars start to round the Sebring International Raceway. You can
Sound
see
like you had a mouthful there.
Yeah, it was certainly a lot of drivers to go through here, and that's the beauty of these 55-car fields. They may be large, but they are certainly going to provide some great racing. Those Porsche Cup cars, they can be quite the handful in the opening laps, so I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see some Audis start to mix it up with them in the first opening few quarters.
Yeah, during the practice time, we actually had a few Audis that were running up near the back of the pack for the Porsches, so I think it'll take them a few laps to get those tires warmed up and give them a chance to really gap the Audis.
It certainly can indeed, and even then, the Audis sometimes can be faster than those Porsche Cup cars through the middle of the corner. The Porsche Cup car is just so fast down the straightaway. I think it's actually faster than a normal GT3 car down the straightaway, so it is certainly a very, very quick car down the straights, but it's not the best in the corners, so that's really where that Audi will make up the majority of its time, and especially at a track like Sebring, the Porsche Cup car can be quite the handful to drive around here.
Yeah, I tried turning a handful of laps. I don't know if you have on this track, but the really undulating surface through these kind of stiff sprung cars all over the place. It made it quite difficult to handle. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it certainly does. I mean, this track is one of the most challenging circuits to drive. I've driven here in the real world several times, and whenever I've jumped in here in an MX-5 Cup car, and it's a pretty easy track, honestly, the MX-5, it's quite a lot of fun, but then you get into a car more serious, like a TCR car, and it really can become a lot more difficult because of how much the bumps are. You really lose a lot of your turning over those bumps that the car just kind of goes straight once you hit them.
And it looks like we have the starting field broken up into two halves here. I think this is the largest field we've run this season, or compared to last season. Is that standard for these sorts of races?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of the cars, the classes kind of get separated out here. So you'll see your Porsche Cup cars will be in theirs. Then they will be spread out a little bit. TCR leaders usually will like to leave a little bit of a gap. And then you'll see your Mustangs just that little bit further back, and then the MX-5s as well. The MX-5s and the Mustangs don't really have to worry about each other all that much. They morally just have to worry about the other cars in their class, whereas the TCRs and the Porsche Cup cars a lot of times going to be a little bit more likely to give each other more room off the start so that they can really have that nice open and clear track to run. And as the field winds through turn 17, Sunset Bend, here at Sebring, the field will be in the hands of Eric Foss on the pole. He's going to wait to gun it here. They're going to get to two lines. The lights are going to come on. Eric Foss is going to gun it. And we're green flag racing here from Sebring. They all fan out right off the bat. And they're going to be nearly 3 wide down into turn 1, but they're all going to make it through. Chris Patz actually off to an amazing start there, but pushes a little bit wide. Eric Foss is going to drive right up underneath him, and it will be Eric Foss now back to the lead, but they're still side by side. We have Joseph Dano. Maybe that's actually, no, that's sorry. Ray Riviere is going to be off and into the wall, so Ray Riviere, terrible start for him. Here come the Audis.
Yeah, it looks like it took him quite a long time to get back on track there. And I think, with as much traffic as there is in front of him, that might put him out for quite a few laps here before he can catch back up to the back of the pack.
It certainly will. And I think we have a massive incident here. Several cars off. That's going to be Chris Potter. I think Corey Mitchell's in this as well. There's several drivers off here in your Porsche Cup category. We'll see if we can grab a replay of that one here. We haven't even gotten to look back at your MX-5 field yet because there's just been so many. You can just see how much the cars are starting to intermingle with each other. This is where big incidents happen, is whenever you have so many cars together like this. Until they get spread out, it can be kind of treacherous for these guys, and it's almost a game of survival for these first few laps.
Yeah, and in this field here, we've got a pretty good mix of both, real-life drivers and native sim drivers kind of crossing over. And so it'll be interesting to see how, both of these groups that have, experience in doing it in their own way can deal with that here in the sim.
Certainly will there. And Chris Patz has gotten himself up into the race lead. Eric Foss is down in second. But you can see Foss is not waiting around. He's looking left and right. He wants a move by Chris Patz out in the lead, but he can't find it yet, and he's going to get stuck out there on those outside bumps. He tries the switchback, but it doesn't look like it's going to work for now for Eric Foss, but he may have just gotten the run off the corner. He's going to look to the outside into turn number 1, and I think he may be able to get it here.
So the first lap times are starting to come in, and you can really see the effect of fuel load versus the qualifying times. I mean, most of these drivers are running, not to mention it's the initial lap, but a lot of these drivers are running 10 seconds slower than they would earlier. They're trying to warm up the tires. They've got full fuel loads. It'll be really interesting to see how that moves on over these next couple laps here, and the tires get warm. This new tire model really presented a bit of a challenge in some of the practice for a lot of our drivers from last season.
Yeah, and it certainly can be, but here's a big incident in your TCR field. Let's try to jump to a replay of that one. It was Adam Farella, and it looks like Jay Rivière. Oh, he's had a horrid start there as Jay Rivière. Let's try to get back to another replay here through turn number 1. You can see an Audi there already off and in the distance. So there's 2 Audis here. Let's just try and... Oh, Rivière's clipped the grass. He's ended off. And then there's just a couple of Audis that already had issues, possibly with a bit of lockup here. I know drivers have really suffered with the lockup on these new tire model because it really is, like you said, just so difficult to get right. Nathan Schwann is off the track and going through the grass here on the opening few laps.
Yeah, and I think, for the viewers that aren't familiar with the tire model changes, and for a bunch of the drivers that, haven't been in iRacing for many seasons, what are some of the major changes in the tire model that you can tell us about?
Yeah, the tire model now, as we can see a replay here of Joseph Daniel, he goes for a quick slide and off and into a very light tap of the barriers there. But yeah, the tire model now, it requires you to get heat into the tires. It's one of the biggest differences. Before, you could just kind of go right off the bat, and it really didn't make any difference as Brian Zabrelski, he's off. And he's going to have to reverse that car. Luckily, he doesn't come back onto the racetrack. He keeps it off and in the off-track section. But yeah, the tire model nowadays, it's very difficult to get heat into those tires, especially in these Porsche Cup cars on the opening lap. The Audis kind of have the advantage of being front-wheel drive where they can kind of pull themselves out of those big slides. But with these Porsche Cup cars, you're pretty much driving on ice for the first lap, and it's basically just a massive slip and slide until you can get some heat into those tires. Battle for the race lead, though, isn't over. Chris Patz and Eric Foss, these two have been glued to each other's bumper for the 5 minutes that we've been racing thus far. Patz, though, still hanging on to the race lead, but Foss isn't letting him get away with it. He's keeping him right in check. Really closes up through the technical section there, does Eric Foss.
And so that's one of the places where it seems there's really interesting racing surface definitions there. It seems like, corner to corner, some of iRacing is a little more aggressive with where it would call an off track than what you might see from a real life corner worker. Is there any kind of rhyme behind that or reason?
Yeah, iRacing has the system of the safety rating. So the more times you get off tracks, and that's any time basically you go off and into the dirt, you will pick up a 1X off track, and if you pick up too many of those, at least in an official race, then you will get a penalty or disqualified. So that's kind of how the iRacing penalty system works there for those who aren't really familiar with iRacing. And yeah, like you said, it can be a little bit more challenging for drivers on the sim than in real life, because a lot of times corner workers in real life don't really care if you go off and into the dirt, whereas the sim will penalize you for that, at least in the event of an off-track penalty. Currently, though, in TCR, it's being led by DJ Alessandrini. He's pulled out a 1.2 second advantage. We just saw your Porsche Cup leader, Chris Patz. He's still stayed your Porsche Cup leader. Max Lupfer, He is in the lead of the Mustangs. This group's been a little bit more spread out. It's got about a 2-point, it's actually got more like a 3-second gap back to the nearest competitor here. So Max Looper is way out and gone in the distance. If we look back here at MX5, this is the closest battle we have right now. Stefan Karelgi and Jared Joseph, these two have really kind of pulled away here from Patrick Gallagher just behind. Gallagher is currently 2.2 seconds behind these leading two. Battle's still raging on, though, here in your Porsche Cup car category. Chris Patz and Eric Foss, these two have really not let either one get about half a second out ahead. And right now, Foss is doing everything he can to pile the pressure on Chris Patz at the moment. But Patz isn't breaking. He's really maintaining himself here, and he's not cracking under pressure. Let's ride on board here for a minute with Eric Foss.
And you can really see both the drivers trying to use all the track there and get all the way to the limit of what the electronic steward will allow. Trying to carry as much speed, and that's probably the reason why they're running a whole second faster than the next two drivers in their class.
Yeah, these two really are pulling away here from the next back. Leif Patterson is the next driver back in behind him, and they've got a 5.6 second advantage. Keep in mind, we're only 1/6 of the way through this race. We're currently just about to cross over the 10-minute mark. So the two out in front in Porsche Cup have really gapped the rest of the field here. It's really awesome to see that these two drivers' skill, and they're so evenly matched on skill as well. They're actually trying to go side by side here. Through Le Mans they will go, and onto the back straight this time and towards Sunset Bend. You can just see these drivers now working their way through the infield section here at Sebring. It can be a very difficult infield section, especially when the tires get a little bit worn. Now, with an hour-long race today, we're going to see these drivers really going at it for nearly that entire hour, especially if you're in a group like this, where you've got a load of pressure on you like Eric Foss and Chris Patz do, as actually Foss did get by Chris Patz there. But that can be a lot harder on your tires than someone who's per se out and by themselves. So these guys are going to have to keep these tires in check, because these Porsche Cup Car tires do certainly wear, and they can be an absolute handful. They can feel worse than the first lap if they're too worn out.
Yeah, Tyler. So we had run some 3-hour-long practice sessions, and it was really interesting hearing the drivers comment on, those long stints, how the setups would impact their, tire life. Towards the beginning of the stint, drivers were running pretty quick. They'd get the tires warmed up, and, after 30 or 40 minutes, people started to notice issues. And when you get an hour in, it really, really starts to add up.
And it certainly does here. And I'll pull up the weather graphic over to the left-hand side. You can see the track is at 26 degrees Celsius today. So it's definitely not the coolest track temperature in the world. And that can even just prove to be something that's hard for some drivers. Some drivers just aren't as good at driving in the high heat conditions, and they prefer the low heat. But then some drivers are the polar opposite, and they love the high heat conditions. So we'll have to see whether the drivers today, you can usually tell with a driver whether they're faster in the high heat or the low heat, because you could just tell it in their driving language.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, when you watch a couple of the drivers come in, you can see some of the drivers tend to be a little bit more lungy on corner entry, and they're really asking a lot of the front tires to, slow the car down and turn the car at the same time, and it builds a lot of heat in the tire. I know some of the physical racers run into that problem, and in the sim, the new tire model seems to capture that really well.
Yeah, most certainly does, and it can even be one of those things where asking too much of those tires too early overheats those fronts, and especially in a car like a TCR car, you'll really notice it, because not only are the TCR cars the driving forces where all the power's coming to, but it's also your turning wheels, so they take the most beating in general. Then you add in the fact that if you're really abusing them and asking them a lot of them, these tires, they're really not going to last you an hour.
Yep.
So there's actually a Porsche Cup car spun out in the middle of the track. That is Ray Riviere. Then I'll try to get a close camera angle. You can see he's actually stopped. He's gotten back going again. Ray just has had a terrible race thus far. He really has had just not a great one. You lead in your Mustang, though.
Like he's struggling. It definitely looked like he was struggling with some sort of suspension damage there in the front. You could see him fighting the car as he was trying to get it to go straight down the track.
Stuart Dalton into the pit lane. He has problems here early on in your TCR field. He'll drop down a few positions with that. And just almost to the back of your TCR field. Let's take a look in here at your leaders in your Mazdas. Jared Joseph has taken over the lead. Stefan Corelli now side by side with Joseph down and towards Sunset Bend. It's going to be Corelli and Joseph down into there, but Corelli's going to get the better of it. Will Joseph be able to get the undercut on him? He's going to do the crossover move, and Patrick Gallagher is going to try to go with him, but he's actually going to choose to go with the number 27, Stefan Corelli, instead. He'll have the inside line heading down and towards turn number 1, and I think Gallagher and Corelli are going to just easily clear Joseph into turn number 1.
And the Porsches are definitely starting to deal with some traffic there. You can see there's a gaggle of Miatas there in front of that one, really slowing up his pace.
Certainly is there. You can just see him in the background. These leaders in the Miatas are certainly not helping out his progress forward. Jump back to the lead, though, in your Porsche Cup category. Eric Foss, he's leading here over Chris Pies. Nothing in it between these two, though. We'll ride on board here with Chris. You can see how they're having to deal with the traffic. It's so difficult whenever you have 4 classes all interchanging. You can see there they're going by 2. It's going to nearly be 3 wide down in towards Hotel Turn. Then out of it, you can just see the pace difference between those two.
Yeah, it's looking like the top of the Mustang class is running 2-minute and 20-second laps. 2-minute 19 is where the leader's sitting, and the average Porsche is running in the 206s right now. So there's definitely some closing speed between these two groups. So it should allow the Porsche drivers to kind of pick their place to pass.
They most certainly can. I mean, those guys just have such straightaway speed over every class that we have here today. You can even see the second fastest class in the Audi TCR just has nothing for that Porsche Cup car down the straightaway. DJ Alessandrini still leading by 2 seconds here in your TCRs. Looking back in your Mustangs here, Max Lufer still leads in your Mustangs, and he's continuing to grow his gap. He's got a 3.1 second advantage. It's about 19 minutes through this race, so he still has quite a bit of time to go. Right now, it looks to be that no one can touch Max Lufer in your Mustangs. Then in your MX-5s, Patrick Gallagher. He's gotten himself up into the race lead, but it's certainly nothing in it between Stefan Gorelgi and Jared Joseph. Gorelgi's going to try and do it. Gallagher off and into the wall then. Gorelgi's almost off with him. Jared Joseph's going to come through. Replay up on your screen now. You can see the 20. Oh, he just gets into the side then of Patrick Gallagher. Gallagher is off and into the wall.
Yeah, and in this series, there's one free quick repair allowed. It'll be, it'd be interesting to be able to track, which drivers have used it already, but it means that the drivers over the course of this hour do have to be careful. They have to make sure that they can make it all the way to the finish.
Yeah, they most certainly do, and something like that really isn't going to help out your chances there. Gallagher, he has to tow back to the pit lane, so even if he has his fast repair that he's to use, he still has to go through that whole tow time. So we can pretty much count Patrick Gallagher out of this one. Two Porsche Cup cars there. They split the MX-5, but that's cost Chris Pies a lot of time there on your race leader, Eric Foss. So he's now up to about a 9/10 of a second gap, nearly a second here So that is not what Pies needed, and he loses a lot of time on your race leader, but he still has nearly 40 minutes of this race left to go. There's still plenty of time for him to make up that positions. Battle on the racetrack, though, is in your TCR. John Jensen and Benson Tai. Just half a second separates them. As we watch this battle up here on the screen, I have a couple of questions here for you, Dano. So kind of give us a little bit of insight here into what you're trying to do here with World Racing League and everything here. Because, I mean, obviously you have a very large community here that's coming out to race. Over 50 cars entered in this one. I mean, that's really nice for the first round of the series.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I think we're really, really excited about the size of the field here. And hopefully throughout the season, we run this race and it gets larger, and maybe we run multiple splits of it. But so back to your original question. So we're iWRL. We're meant to be the sim racing side to WRL, which is World Racing League. And that's a endurance racing league that runs races around the United States. At a variety of tracks like this one and other ones. This one isn't on the 2020 schedule, but I know there's plenty of people pining for it to be there. And what we're hoping to do here is take a bunch of racers from the physical world and take a bunch of native sim racers and really get them to intermingle and race with each other, and hope that we can grow both sides. We can get drivers from the sim coming and, driving real cars around racetracks and enjoying that as much as the rest of us. And hoping we can get some of the drivers from real race cars into the sim and enjoying that as much as you and I do, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's certainly an awesome transition. And I know personally, I use the simulator for my training for the real world all the time. And it really can be an amazing tool if you use it that way. I think it's one of the awesome things. I love when series try and get a lot of drivers from the real world into the sim, because it kind of unlocks them and really shows them how much of a tool the simulator really can be for learning these racetracks like Sebring International Raceway, because this is a really tough track to learn. And a lot of times when you go to the racetrack, you only have a certain amount of sessions until you have to come to race time, where in the sim, you have unlimited time on your hands. I mean, there's nothing really stopping you from running 100, 200 laps before you even ever step foot on the real racetrack, and it's 99% the exact same.
It really, really is. You take a track like this, for example, and it's neat how you've got different types of curbing. Some of it's a little more aggressive, when you're coming into turn 3, 4, 5, and you've got a few places where the curbing's a little more forgiving in turn 7, 8, 9. And it really replicates all of that. So that way you can get a feel for, well, do I take the whole curb? Do I leave it? Do I try and, how can I attack this track without actually putting your physical car at risk? You can learn a lot of lessons with little cost. It makes it really, really exciting.
It really does. And I mean, even something like what we've used, I used this multiple times last year in preparation for the World Challenge season, where I would show up to a lot of these racetracks and have never actually been there, but I'd run 50 laps on the sim, and it was just immediately down to almost fine-tuning my driving, more than picking up the track, then fine-tuning. It was really able to cut out a lot of that learning period and just get straight into what I actually needed to be doing.
Yeah, there's a handful of drivers that race with WRL that are, running the race right now. At that, I mean, they swear by iRacing. They use it as a training tool for most of the tracks that we go to. There's very few that we race at that aren't covered in iRacing. And it really makes a difference. You can come to the track, you can have a lot of markers already worked out. Especially for the drivers that are driving cars that have a model in iRacing. It looks like we had an incident there in turn 7.
Joseph Dale, we'll get a replay up on your screen here. I think it was just a very simple spin. It even could have just been a little bit of a lockup on the brakes. Luckily, though, it doesn't look like he hit anyone. And yeah, just a little bit of lockup of the rear tires. Goes around just Joseph Daniel in the JP Sims Shed Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car.
Yeah, so in the practice sessions, a lot of the drivers were trying to deal with setting up those Porsches. And, one of the comments that, was really made and shared amongst the group was that adding a little bit of rear brake bias made them quite a bit more drivable upon, mid-corner. You got a lot less understeer. But at the same time, a lot of drivers were fighting with that rear lockup. As the tires begin to age here, we're already 28 minutes into the race. And as we start to get further 45 minutes, it'll be really interesting to see how the drivers fight those tires. The ones that abuse them anyway.
And it looks to me like these two out in front, they're not doing any of the sort. They're just cruising here in these Porsche Cup cars. And these guys, I like the strategy that they're pulling here. They're really not pushing these tires. They're not asking too much out of them. And they're really just saving them to the end so that they can fight each other on pretty much level footing, because they're doing the exact same strategy here. And they're going to have a nice amount of tire life left in these tires, to the point where they're not just so focused on driving the car, they can actually focus on racing.
Yeah, we're 30 minutes in here, and the pit window for a lot of these cars should be coming in the next 10 minutes or so. Most of these cars are limited to enough fuel to make it for around 40 minutes. For our leaders, Foss and Pais, it'll be interesting to see if either of them find it worth taking a new set of tires.
Yeah, most certainly will. I would imagine that the fuel in these Porsche Cup cars will allow them to take at least 2 tires. See that in another series that we cover here on Apex Racing TV. A lot of times drivers will take 2 tires instead of taking 4, because 4 tires, you're getting stuck in the pits for a little bit too long. But on these Porsche Cup cars, I think you can almost get away with taking 2 left side or right side tires, depending on what you would want here. I would assume that you'd be taking left side, just because of the amount of load that they're under here in Sebring.
Yeah, and all of your hard cornering is all left hand, and most of your high speed braking, or high speed heavy braking corners are all left hand side is taking the load as well.
Most certainly are, and that gap has kind of separated out a little bit here. You can see Chris Pais has gotten stuck in a little bit of Audi and Mustang traffic here. You can see he really has to dart left and right to get through that traffic. Race leader, though, Eric Foss, he's a little bit more out in the open. He doesn't really have all that much traffic to deal with.
Yeah, multi-class racing is really interesting like that. There's a portion of it where the track is different every time you come around. All of the cars that are in the slower classes, they appear like just parts of the track and obstacles in your way. It's the best drivers here will be able to navigate those with as little time loss as possible.
They most certainly will. Look a little bit farther back, though. You can see battle here in TCR. This is the battle for fourth in class. It is Kevin Zhu, Van Dunka. Dunka is going to get ahead of Zhu here.
And you can really see the loads that that suspension is dealing with through that corner, how it's hopping left and right. You know, you can only imagine the load it's placing on the tires and how much heat it's adding in. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there really is just so much load on those tires. You can see there, Kevin dives down onto the pit lane. But I mean, the amount of load that you're going under through Sunset Bend is just an incredible amount. Because the whole left side tires are all loaded up. If the car even gets that little bit sideways, it's really easy just to fully lose the car because you have really nothing as far as transition goes there, and it's all on one side of the car. And if those tires give up, pretty much done.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And from the looks of it, it looks like Foss is really focused on just being smooth and you know, repeatedly hitting his same marks every time. I mean, every time we switch back the camera, he tends to be in the same place at the same spot on the track every time.
He really is here. Let's take a ride on board here with your race leader. See a lap of the Sebring International Raceway. That was a lap then with your race leader, Eric Fossut there. You could see him having to deal with a little bit of traffic and getting back through. But he did a very nice job of it. Let's take a look here at your race leader in your Mustangs. He's actually into the pits.
Looks like he's taking tires as well. You can see he's jacked up in the air on that left side.
So it appears that he took left side tires and he's going to take right side tires. So Max Luffer will go for 4 here in Sebring. Obviously, you can tell the track temperature must be getting to him, or he's been a little bit too hard on those tires too early, but he's still going to come out way clear of his nearest Mustang competitor.
Yeah, the setups for that Mustang, you know, a lot of the drivers in the practice servers were experimenting with adding a little bit of toe here or there to make it a bit more responsive. The main complaint is that it felt, you know, front heavy. And there was too much front brake bias. So a lot of the setups tended to be more aggressive on tire wear. You know, it could be that that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah, most certainly can be. And even whenever you have a track like this, if you already don't have a setup That's not very easy on tires. Whenever you add in the fact that we have a quite hot track here today, that really doesn't help out your situation there for tire wear. It looks like Kyle Hare has also, he's actually come in for a stop, so this is actually battle for position here. Kyle all over the back of Max just ahead of him. He's got a little bit of damage to the front end of that Mustang, but he's making it work here.
Yeah, it looks like he's trying to tuck in and take a draft here on this short straight.
Leader in your MX-5s is in Jared Joseph to the pit box this time. Let's see if second place Mike Bond will follow him in as well. And I think he will. So your two leaders in Mazda and in your two leaders in your Mazdas are into the pit box. See if Charles here will follow him in as well, or if he's going to stay out for another lap, because it seems to me that about that 35 to 40 minute mark, like you said earlier, is exactly when these drivers are all going to be coming to the pits, and that's exactly what's happening. Charles is into the pit lane this time, and TCR car is also going to follow him in. Let's see if Stefan, he's actually already made a stop, so let's see where Jared Joseph's going to come out in comparison to Stefan Gorelgi.
Yeah, and these pit stops are really starting to shake up the positions in the Mazda field. So, it'd be interesting to keep track of these next couple drivers running in first, second, and third to see if they've pitted yet, or if that's true track position they picked up.
So Gorelgi has pitted. Jared Joseph obviously just came out of the pit lane, so these two are battling each other for position. Todd Carver as well has come into the pit. The only driver who actually is yet to come into the pits in your MX-5, actually the majority of your MX-5 field have come in. The only driver yet to come in as Alex Zuga, way down the order in the MX-5. So everyone right now in your MX-5 field at least is battling each other for position. Battle for the race lead. Gorelgi and Joseph. Jared Joseph will take over the race lead here. Stefan Gorelgi now down into second place. He wasn't able to hold on to the race lead for long, but he's trying to come back here at Joseph. But Joseph just has incredible pace then as Jared Joseph today. He's been so fast, and he's taken back over the race lead now. He's already up to a 0.6 of a second advantage over Stefan Gorelgi.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how the traffic impacts these two as they battle. After you come around turn 16, this is a place where the Miatas can really use help with the draft on that back straight, being down on power versus the rest of the class.
They most certainly can, and even a draft off a car like a TCR car in these MX-5s can make a slight difference. You can see Gorelgi's not really able to close up that much then on Jared Joseph because he did have the advantage of a TCR draft for the majority of that straightaway.
Yeah, and let's see if we can tuck in an onboard here for this next lap. Coming into turn 1 here under the bridge, really looking to set up wide right. You can see him trying to use all the track and avoid all this traffic. Pull in tight against this wall. He's fighting a little oversteer, maybe a little bit, the tires are hot, but trying to carry as much as he can through turn 1. And these Miatas, that's really what you're fighting, is just carry speed. Braking hard down into turn 3, getting set up for this quick left, right, left complex of 4 and 5. And it looks like he's going to get the benefit of a draft on this back straight here, coming down into turn 6 and 7. So this is one of the places that's most painful driving these Miatas. But you're going to try and line up way left and brake as late as you can here at this 4 cone. Carry as much speed as you can here down through turn 7. And it really looks like he's handling traffic well. I mean, we've had a handful of cars passing him here as he comes in through 9, getting ready for turn 10. Now, this is one corner where the curbing is most aggressive, and so it tends to set the car off, and you'll see him avoid a lot of the curbing here. Down into turn 13. This one here is pretty early on power to keep the back settled. And now he's going to try and run it out through 14 into 15, 16. Now, during practice, this is one of the places where the drivers were most interested in getting their setups and hitting their marks, because if you carry this right, it really sets you up for a fast exit here in turn 16 down this long straight. You can see him using all the track on the left, exiting all the way out on the exit curbing, trying to carry as much as he can. Down this back straight, every mile an hour matters, because these Mazdas are really only getting up to low 120s compared to the 160s for the Porsches here. So they're really min-maxing as much as they can, tucking in close to that wall, and you can see the undulation here in the suspension as he's fighting with the car through turn 17, trying to make sure that he rolls on power but doesn't lose the power to the slide. But it looks like a really clean lap overall, and it seems like that was pretty consistent with the other ones he's done. So excited to see how these next 20 minutes go for him. Now, here's an interesting question, because the drivers can make selections as to how much fuel they take and tires. Is it possible that he took too much fuel here?
Sorry, folks, I've actually been muted there. I just don't see that as an option, to be honest with you, because I don't think that you could take that much extra fuel. I'm thinking that he came out of the pit lane. Oh, he took tires. His opponents didn't take tires, so Chris Patz, no tires for him, but Eric Foss did. I think he actually forgot to turn off tires. Now, that would actually make sense.
Well, yeah, so in the next 14 minutes, it'll be interesting to see if he can turn those tires into an advantage, especially now that they're warmed up. We'll have to pay attention to the split times and laps to see if he's making it count.
You can see here, battle for second place. Andrew Lanning, who's gotten himself up into second. He's made up 10 spots. Wow, what a drive then from Andrew Lanning thus far. Eric Foss down the inside he'll go, and he nearly makes contact with a Miata then, but he backs out of it in time. And Eric Foss, luckily there, didn't make any sort of contact, but there's a car spun around. That's Andrew Lanning, Lanning round on the racing line.
Yeah, that battle through traffic almost turned out bad for the other way around. But but for the mistake by Lanning, I think we'd have Eric Foss still fighting through that traffic right now.
I certainly agree with you. It's so hard, man. Whenever you've got 4 classes all out there on the same time, all these different classes have such different speed differentials. With the MX-5, it's the slowest class, and some of the time the Porsche Cup guys don't really realize how slow those MX-5s actually are. But here we actually have a battle on the racetrack between Stefan Gorelgi and Todd Carver here. Carver is going to try it around the outside on Gorelgi. I don't think he's able to make that one work. They nearly make contact. Gorelgi nearly chops off the nose of Carver there, but Carver backs out of it in time. He's still within 0.2 of a second, 0.3 of a second here, but he will have draft down onto the straightaway. Gorelgi blocks early, but has to back out of it because of the TCR traffic that's coming.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see this entry here into turn 16, see if he tries to lunge him. Corners like this, it's a little bit better to carry some entry speed, but with the undulation, you got to make sure that you don't carry a little too much, because it's exactly what you said earlier. There's not much room to run out here. It's just a whole wall.
Yeah, there really isn't. I mean, and then whenever you hit one of those walls, it can cost you so much time. As you can see there, Gorelgi actually able to swoop around the outside of Todd Carver. Carver tried the inside. He's really trying absolutely everywhere right now to get by Stefan Gorelgi. So far unable to do anything.
Oh, and he's fighting some oversteer.
Oh, Gorelgi's off and into the barriers. Stefan Gorelgi, he's spun it off here. And he's reset back to the pit lane. What an unfortunate incident. I think he's just gotten that car up on the inside curb. He was sliding there on the entry, drifts the car through, overcorrects, and off and into the guardrail he goes. So Todd Carver easily takes that position, and he's up into what is the 29th overall, second place in your MX-5s. It's a pretty close battle, though, between Eric Foss and Brooke Galloway. Galloway just about 0.4 of a second behind Eric Foss here, so I don't think that this call by Foss to take tires, whether it was purposeful or accidental, was certainly not a great idea because it cost him so much time. Honestly, it doesn't even look to me like he's gotten the tire temperature in those tires. He's really fighting that car. Galloway nearly able to make a move. We have 10 minutes left in the race, so if Galloway wants it, he needs to get on it quickly.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Foss here, this is going to cost him a bit of tire. Instead of focusing on trying to close the gap to Chris Pais, he's really got to defend his position in a few of these spots and make sure he doesn't get overtaken. And so I think this is going to really reduce any chance that we have of seeing a last lap battle between the number 1 and number 2 spot.
Yeah, I think with the gap that they have, though, 28 seconds, I mean, that's going to be nearly impossible for Foss to close up, and with 9 minutes to go, I think right now he's got to more focus on Galloway behind, because Galloway is his nearest threat. And Galloway certainly could overtake him because he has good pace there. There's a TCR car parked off to the side. That's number 114. Just trying to figure out who that is. That's Jan Jansen there. So Jansen off, and he's gotten that car back underway again. 2 drivers in. Leif Patterson into the pit lane for the Porsches. Checking in, though, on your TCR leader here. DJ Alessandrini's all out by himself. 3 seconds ahead of Paul Slavonic.
Yeah, no, in practice, those two were running neck and neck. I want to say there was only a couple, maybe 2/10 of a second between the two of them. So yeah, either Paul is running a little bit slower here in the race or dealing with some tire degradation, or DJ's really just picked up that much more pace here in the race.
Yeah, I know how fast DJ Alessandrini can be. He's at 6,000 I rating for a reason. The guy knows how to drive race cars fast, and he's certainly doing that here today. And as he makes his way through some MX5 traffic, he shouldn't have too many more laps to go. We're currently working lap 24 for your Porsche Cup cars and 23 for your TCR cars. And I think we're going to see maybe 3 to 4 laps maximum here left in this race. Eric Fossey starting to pull out a little bit of a gap here over Callaway. Just behind him. Oh, that's a bit sideways a little bit on the entry there for Galloway. He really is pushing that Porsche Cup car down into Sunset Bend. It's so easy to get loose there in the entry. You really can't afford to be locking up the rear tires or having any sort of oversteer, because at that point, it's so easy for the car just to snap and go spinning off and into the tire barriers.
Especially not, as the ground is, undulating and creating that variable load on the tire. It's every extra excuse for the car to come around on you there. So it's a surprise that he kept it underneath him.
Yeah, very much is then. Sunset Bend, it's one of the most tricky corners of this entire racetrack. It almost makes the track feel whole here, though, because a lot of the second half of the racetrack isn't as challenging as the first half. It's a little bit more straightforward, but then you head down into 17, and it just really throws up that big challenge that the first part of the racetrack has, and it finishes off the lap just so well here in Sebring.
Yeah, absolutely. As you earlier on, you're dealing with some lower speed, not quite as difficult of a surface, but more technical corners. Later on in the track, the corners get simpler, but you're dealing with quite a bit more surface imperfections. It makes this track really, really interesting to drive.
Yeah, it certainly does. And that's what makes Sebring just such a special racetrack, and what a special track, and why so many people on the service love it. Just looking a little bit forward ahead, though, into the schedule here that we will have coming up. On February 11th, we'll be in Laguna Seca. Talk about a legendary U.S. racetrack. Laguna Seca just has to take the spot for it. And imagine just 50 cars in 4 different classes. It's going to be absolutely insane to watch that.
Yeah, I think we're really expecting some, lots of snakes around some of the low-speed corners there. The corkscrew will be quite entertaining.
That certainly will, and then we will move on to the Barber Motorsports Park. A lot of people don't like Barber. It's a very underused racetrack on the sim, but it is so much fun. And again, we will see some awesome racing there. A very tight circuit the Barber Motorsports Park is. Then we move on to Watkins Glen and the boot layout. That's a little bit more open circuit. I think we're going to see people be a little bit more spread out there as we look at a battle here on your screen between, this is John Jensen coming back through the MX-5, so not a battle for position in class. Then we actually head to Mid-Ohio for round number 5. Talk about a legendary racetrack as well. Mid-Ohio, it's got so much history. It's such a legendary racetrack. And again, it's a pretty tight circuit, so it's going to be difficult, I think, for these guys to get around 4 classes as John Jensen hits the wall through turn number 1.
Yeah, you'll notice on that schedule, there's, many of the drivers that are familiar with WRL will notice that on the schedule, there's a good mix of tracks that WRL runs itself. And so, one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing here as the real life racers kind of get more experience here in the sim, how they adjust, and on those tracks that they know, does their performance step up, and do they start to challenge some of the better native sim drivers that we have in the series?
Yeah, most certainly. Then looking a little bit further ahead, we're just going to go through an entire schedule rundown here. Mosport, the next track on the schedule, it's run IRL in IMSA and many other professional. It's such a fun track too. I mean, talk about a track that's really going to be a challenge for these drivers to run. Not so much to race. It's a very kind of open racetrack and a lot of runoff area for the drivers to deal with, but it's going to be interesting to have within class battles there. I think we're going to see a lot of tight in-class battles. Then we head to Road America, the American Nürburgring as it's named. Then we head into my personal favorite track, I think in the world right now, which is the Sonoma International Raceway. It's such a fun track, a lot of elevation change, a lot of tire wear. Then we head to the
Definitely my home track.
Then we head to Lime Rock Park, another one of those tricky racetracks. It's also a very small racetrack, so again, could pose a pretty big challenge to the drivers running it. Then we head to Daytona at the road course. Talk about another legendary racetrack. 24 hours of Daytona runs there. There's so much space in that racetrack. A lot of in-class battles and a lot of draft will happen there. Then another track that's pretty underused, actually, on the iRacing service, it's the Indy Road. That's where we'll head for the penultimate round. Then we head to the most underused track, but one of the greatest tracks on iRacing. We head to COTA. What a way to end the season that will be.
Absolutely, and you can see there's a good mix of tracks that are, kind of roval sort of tracks, as well as road courses, some large, some small. You had mentioned Lime Rock, and that will definitely be a track that's interesting to watch 55 plus cars try and make it around there, make some passing for a full hour. Should make for some great action.
Yeah, I mean, Lime Rock Park really puts up close in-class action, and then you add in the fact that there's just going to be multi-class weaving in and out. Skirts Pies here. He's going to start his final lap of the race. So Chris Pies, he's got one more trip around the race circuit to claim victory here in round number 1.
What's interesting is it's not uncommon to see a driver with that large of a gap to kind of back it off and try and drive the car conservatively in the last, remaining minutes of a race. But Galloway and Foss haven't been able to close the gap to Pies in the last 10 minutes here. So it just goes to show how much he's running on pace, even when he's cool and collected.
And that's a great trait to have, and it's something that would be wonderful for him, especially going into the latter parts of the season. Whenever you have a driver like that who can run on pace but still run it calm, then that's going to be awesome if he's in a close championship battle latter end of the season, because that's when the pressure is really on. And we see a lot of drivers almost crack under that pressure when they have such tight championships. So not much longer here for Chris Pats. He will head on to the back straight. Pies, now he's got 2 more cars to lap here. He's got a 26.5 second advantage over Rue Galloway. He's got 1 more corner to deal with, though. It's the hardest corner on the racetrack, but he's done it 28 times before, and he will do it once again. Chris Pats will come home for a race 1 victory here. Chris Pies wins from Sebring.
And it looks like we still have a near battle here in the Audi TCR class. Be interesting to see how they close up the finish of the race here.
DJ Alessandrini starting to lose some time here to Paul Slovak in second place, but it's still 1.6 seconds, so Alessandrini doesn't have to be too worried here right off the bat. He still has quite a large gap here, and he has about half a lap left to go. You can see a couple of drivers in TCR already finishing just due to their position in relative to the leader. Looking back at your Mustangs, Max Lufer has come across the line to win, but this is a very close battle. This is for the lead in MX5. Jared Joseph and Todd Carver. The win in MX5 is all that separates them. Less than half a racetrack left to go for Jared Joseph. But Todd Carver is all over the back of him. Now, actually, he's lost a little bit of time there with that Mustang. He's now up to 9/10 of a second. That may have been Carver's chances done then. A second now separates them. Jared Joseph's just got to get through the final corner. Sunset Bend. It's an 0.8 of a second gap, and it's coming down here. Carver is closing, and he's closing fast. Joseph, he's slow on the back straightaway here. Is they going to go side by side down through Sunset Bend? I think they are. No, they're not actually. Joseph outbreaks him. Jared Joseph will come through the final corner to win here in Sebring.
What an exciting finish after a whole hour of racing. I mean, to have the lead decided in that class by less than 1 car length. And that's the largest class we have here. So as the season goes on, the battles should get even more exciting.
And it most certainly will. We're waiting on just a few more drivers left to finish. Oh, that's so unfortunate there. Troy Tregallo runs out of fuel within sight of the line here. Such an unfortunate end to his race here today. Let's wait on our final race results to get all finalized here for round number 1. Let's just go ahead and quickly cap that off before we get into these race results. I mean, what an opening round. We saw action all the way through every single class, and even in the classes like TCR, which were a little bit more spread out, still provided some really awesome through traffic action.
Yeah, you know, the 55-car field really helped make sure that no matter what, there were at least a couple drivers all around the same speed at any given point in time in the track. You know, especially in the Mazda class with, 20-plus cars there. That was really exciting. We had some great battles. We watched a couple good battles in the Mustangs. This track really allowed that to happen, being so spread out, having some long straight.
Yeah, they most certainly did here. And here are your final race results up on your screen. Chris Pye, wins by 25 seconds over Root Galloway. Eric Foss in third. Andrew Lanning. Derwan. Abi. Chris. DJ Alessandrini wins in TCR. Pasavakic second place. Eric Kutel in third. Van Dukan in fourth, and then it will be Ray Rivard down in 12th place overall. Brian Zabrelski in 13th. Kevin Zhu, Benson Tai, Max Lufer, Kyle Ayer, and Chris DeJong will round out your top 18. The rest of your results will cycle through up on your screen. Jared Joseph was your winner in MX5. He finished in 28th overall. As we just continue to cycle on through, you can just see how big the field was, how spread out and diverse the field was. They're coming from all parts of the U.S. and the world. That is your final race results here from round 1 at Sebring. I mean, I can't wait for round number 2. It's certainly going to be action-packed. And we do have your overall race winner waiting in the interview room. So let's go ahead and get race winner, Chris Pies.
Hello.
Chris, what a race from you. You pulled off an amazing strategy, it looked like, in the pits. You were able to pull out nearly a 28 or 29 second advantage, and you were able to hold on to it for the most part all the way to the end of that one. Talk us through that.
Yeah, it was an amazing race. I hope it was as exciting for you guys watching as it was actually driving the car. I was battling pretty hard with Eric for a long time, and was able to somehow get past him in the pits. I just took fuel. I don't know if he got stuck in the pits with tires or what happened there, but I definitely took advantage of it, and from there it was pretty clean sailing.
And I mean, I could tell you kind of backed it down there on the last lap. Obviously, I'm sure you're thinking long term as far as the championship goes, because you definitely, it looked to be just kind of took it a bit safe there on the last lap and just really made sure that you were able to collect those championship points and get on to the end of the race.
Yeah, absolutely. It was it's daunting out there in traffic, especially when you're dicing it. For the whole first half of the race with Eric, he'd get by some traffic and I'd get caught up, and then I know I saw it up ahead. He'd get caught up and I'd catch back up, and that's multi-class racing. But yeah, when I was up by a significant margin, I kind of backed it down a little bit. No, not willing to take any risks.
Well, certainly a good race from you here today. We have a week or a week off here, and then we're back in 2 weeks' time. We're heading to Laguna Seca. What is your personal kind of opinion of Laguna Seca? Because I know a lot of people kind of have mixed feelings. Some people love it, some people hate it. What's your thoughts?
Laguna Seca, it's another track, and basically whatever track that I'm on any given week is my favorite track. At least that's the approach I take. But in general, it's maybe not my favorite. I think the corkscrew is definitely unique, but yeah, it's kind of just in a classic American track that there are some people out there that are incredibly fast at it and are very good at it, and I'm looking forward to dicing it. Hopefully, we can have as good a show as we did tonight, and just have some fun.
Certainly will be. Who do you want to thank, and who gets it done for you and was able to bring you the win tonight?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I just want to thank my family, parents, and they helped me out and have put up with this kind of crazy hobby of mine for quite a while now. And I also want to thank the team over at WTW. I drive in WRL in real life, and there's two teams that I've run with. It's Casey Carden Motorsports and MX5, and Mark Martin's WTW team, along with Judd Miller, who are co-owners of that team, and they've had some experience in a GT4 club sport in real life, and hoping to go to Barber in a few weeks and drive again there in real life in the club sport, and just being able to come here and do it virtually as well, in between the actual real races, it's awesome. So thank you guys, and thank everybody with both WRL and iWRL, and Steve Ray especially for putting this show on.
Well, congratulations once again on your victory here today. And it was certainly a dominant one. We'll hope to see you in 2 weeks' time at Laguna Seca.
Thank you very much.
And next, we will actually pull in your TCR winner, DJ Alessandrini.
Congratulations, DJ. It was a really exciting race to watch. What can you tell us about the last couple laps there?
Oh man, so I've never really driven the TCR car longer than like 15 minutes. So my setup just stopped turning about 50 minutes into the race, and I had some bad luck with some traffic. And it was a lot closer than I wanted it to be. That's for sure. Paul he was just really consistent. He dealt with the traffic really well, and yeah, that's why he was there at the end. But I was able to build that gap in the middle part of the race, and it was enough. So yeah, it was good fun.
Awesome. Yeah, it was wonderful to race, or wonderful to watch. How did you feel about the kind of the speed difference between the different classes, and how did you feel these cars fit in?
Well, I think the reason I picked the TCR is because I felt like it would have been Murder Town in the Miata. That's what I would have liked to drive. But with the Porsches, I joined up practice earlier, and the Porsches looked like a mess. They were sliding all over the place, spinning everywhere, and I'm going, man, this is not going to be a fun session in the car that I enjoy driving, which is the Miata. So I elected to just pick something a little faster. I didn't want to drive the Mustang for an hour, and I didn't think I would have a race if I drove the Porsche just based on the practice times. So I thought I'd hop in the TCR since I don't really drive that, and I explore something new.
Sounds like you're pretty dangerous in just about any car then.
I'm a big nerd. I play this all the time.
Well, I think, as Tyler would put it, anyone you need to give out thanks for that, kind of helped you make it there to the end.
Just the group of guys in my Discord just being a bunch of hooligans and making me laugh every once in a while, miss a couple braking zones because my eyes were closed because I'm laughing too hard. So those guys are a bunch of fun to hang out with, and I'm glad we had a bunch of camaraderie going in that Discord. It was a ton of fun.
Awesome. Well, really looking forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time here at Laguna Seca, and wishing you some luck for the rest of the season here.
All right, thanks, guys. I won't be making any of the other races until later in the season because the Grid Life iRacers will be running. But it was a lot of fun just coming in here and being a hooligan.
Well, you're welcome anytime.
Thanks, guys.
That was DJ Alessandrini. Now we'll pull in the winner of your Mustang class. Max, congratulations on the win here in round number 1. He had a 6-second advantage. It didn't really look like you had that much of an exciting race, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it kind of turned out to be a little bit boring. Quite a few of the Mustangs got caught up in incidents with some slower TCR cars at the start, which kind of provided a large gap for me. And then my biggest competitor, Kyle, he ended up on a different race strategy where he pitted a lot earlier than I did, so we didn't see each other for most of the race, unfortunately. But those last 10 laps were a good fight, trying to stay ahead of him, because once you get in the draft with the Mustangs, it's hard to kind of shake that.
Yeah, I mean, the Mustangs, they're a car that I think is very underused on the iRacing service. It's one of those cars that really you don't see a lot of drivers just jumping to racing. But obviously, the Mustang field here is a pretty nice, actually, size, and you obviously seem to have quite a good race. Like you said, a couple of the Mustang competitors unfortunately fell out early. But kind of give us your thoughts. I mean, I've always been interested to know. Someone who, I don't know whether you drive the Mustang a lot or not, but what are your thoughts on the car in general?
Well, I've been privy to the car for the past 4 weeks with the Grid Life iRacers series, and also with doing some special events at Daytona trying to boost my iRating. So I've gotten used to the Mustang quite a lot over the past 4 or 5 weeks, almost to the point where I'm almost tired of it, but I've gotten very good at it. The Mustang, it definitely takes a little bit of finesse to get it through the mid-corner. You don't want to jump on the throttle too early. Otherwise, it just pushes out wide. So you have to be a little bit more patient than you think in the vehicle. And doing that can get you some good runs out of corners and make some good lap times.
Well, it certainly looks like a very, very fun car to drive. Again, congratulations on your race win. Who do you want to thank?
Well, I want to plug first my own personal race team, South of the Border. Check me out on Facebook. We have both a Lemons car and we're building a Grid Life Touring Cup car at the moment. And then also plug Grid Life iRacers there, who kind of got me into sim racing and who I've kind of worked with to help develop my skills over the past 2 years.
Well, congratulations once again on a race win here in round number 1. Hope to see you back in 2 weeks' time at Laguna Seca.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
And that was, I believe, our final interview of the night. So, any final thoughts, Dan?
No, I mean, we had a lot of really close racing throughout the race. I think this first week there were a lot of drivers still trying to figure out their cars, figure out their setups. It would be interesting to see after they've had another 2 weeks worth of practice at Laguna Seca if they can, if these opening laps aren't quite as incident filled as they were today. But definitely made for some exciting, watching the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, they certainly did. And we'll see you back. And that's actually, well, that'll be it from us here at Apex Racing TV. And we hope to see you back in 2 weeks' time for round number 2 of the World Racing League series here at the exact same time. From myself, Tyler Maxson, and Daniel Dorr, we say thank you for watching. Goodbye.